We're wrapping up the big bank earnings today with Morgan Stanley and Bank of America. Two different, but in a way similar tales. Agnes Crane and Anthony Curry took a look at them respectively. Anthony, what did we see in Morgan Stanley to just kick things off here?
Well, we saw initially a loss, but they beat estimates, which is just wonderful to beat with a slightly lower loss. But don't forget, the main reason they made a loss this quarter or last quarter is because they had a great big charge from settling their long-standing claims with MBIA, the insurer.
Which they had flagged.
Which they had flagged. Right. In fact, it's great for capital. It's going to release a fair amount of capital for them, especially under Basel III. So that's all good news. It just turns them into a loss. Get rid of that. They made a smallish profit, probably sort of around about $600–700 million for the quarter, which is not brilliant,
but ultimately
it's
on
something.
The headline, a loss, right?
Yeah.
I mean, which is just sort of unthinkable, really. And I mean, in a way, I mean, it is sort of blurred with a lot of this noise, but it is really sort of amazing to still see an investment bank like Morgan Stanley losing money in a quarter.
Yeah, absolutely. Although it's not unusual given what we've seen elsewhere. Citigroup posted a loss. Goldman Sachs was pretty poor.
Yeah.
JP Morgan somehow did well compared to the others.
Yeah.
But you know, it's Morgan Stanley. At least strip everything out, it's made a small amount of money.
And B of A is sort of a similar story,
well,
right?
It's also it's almost like the mirror of Morgan Stanley in the sense that it posted a gain, but when you strip away some of the one-time gains, like it's the sale of its
own debt.
Exactly.
And,
When you strip some of that away, it's not looking so great. I mean, they still have these huge litigation costs related to mortgages, legacy mortgages from their purchase of Countrywide. In the last quarter, litigation was like $1.8 billion.
Right.
The gain that we saw from the gain that we saw from the China Construction Bank was about $2.9 billion.
Right. So that was another kind of way they kind of boosted the numbers a little bit.
Exactly. But again, it's like one of these things that you look at it and you're just like, okay, well, you've been able to sell assets to basically offset some of these losses.
Right.
Future losses are still out there. I mean, they have not.
But that's a different story for Morgan Stanley.
Yeah.
I mean, they really have sort of cleared the decks.
They're now looking
right?
pretty clean. They're talking a good story about what they think will happen next. At least, but let's forget earnings for now. Really good earnings. But
we just lost money. But
we've lost
coming,
money.
Right?
But they've no longer got any more big issues to deal with, like MBIA or what's it called?
Mortgage issues.
Commercial real estate issues. They've got no more residential mortgage issues either. They've got a pretty high compensation ratio at the investment bank of 41%. But in part, that's because they explained, look, we did increase the amount of stuff we're giving to our guys in terms of stock, so therefore we're deferring a lot of that. And 2011 was a year where we a lot just came through the pipe.
Right.
So that will get better next year. We'll have more ability to manage the expense line next year. So it sounds great, right? So the issue for him, though, for James Gorman, who runs the firm, is he's had 2 years, along with Brian Moynihan
also. So Brian Moynihan, both these guys started 2 years
pretty
ago.
much on the same
They've
day.
had just a mess for, they had some good years.
Yeah.
Merrill Lynch was good for B of A for a while. Morgan Stanley had obviously some great trading stretches there. But now where do these guys stand at this point? I mean, it's...
Well, you'd think that with most of the rubbish cleared off the decks that James Gorman looks pretty good. But think about it this way. He's had 2 years to get this thing right. The stock's underperformed, well, as most of them have, but his has underperformed Goldman Sachs, trading low on a multiple of book value. But now he's got no excuse. Okay, the market can go against him, but he talks about how expenses are under control and getting even better under control. They're doing well in their investment banking advisory franchise. But can they make everything work? They're nowhere near their targets on pre-tax margins for the asset management and wealth management division, for example. So now he's got the ability to prove that he's really done a good job. Right. If he doesn't do it this year, he looks pretty exposed.
And Brian Moynihan, on the other hand, still has, as you say, all this legacy stuff.
He still
has
has a ways to go. I mean, I think there have been improvements. They've built up liquidity. They look pretty good under Basel III. So I mean, he's making, he's definitely they've done
great
strides.
Balance sheet management the last couple of years. It's the earnings where they're more than struggling. So, but because he can look at the legacy issues of his predecessor and say, I'm still dealing with that, maybe that makes him look a bit more secure, at least for now, than James Gorman.
All right, we'll leave it there. We'll keep an eye on James Gorman and Brian Moynihan and be back with more Breaking Views tomorrow.